Hello and welcome to IAMC Radio and Podcast. We're covering the top news headlines for today, March 26th.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a lot to go over today, so let's just dive right in.
Sounds good. First up, a story out of Toronto. A Nigerian man, Adamabuwa Chukwuka, he's 31, is facing a first-degree murder charge.
It's related to the death of a 60-year-old homeless man, Mario Ferreira. A really sad case.
Yeah, it sounds like a completely unprovoked attack. Back on March 20th, police got a call about an unconscious man turned out to be Mr. Ferreira.
And he was pronounced dead right there at the scene. Security camera footage actually shows Ferreira lying on a bench.
Just lying there early morning around 5:20 a.m.
And then Chukwuka comes into view. Apparently, he grabbed some debris, could have been from a construction site, maybe even a dumpster, and then, well, he attacked Ferreira.
It's awful.
Detective Trevor Grieve, he is leading the investigation, and he's really emphasized how important it is to find justice for Mr. Ferreira.
He's asking anyone with information to come forward, no matter how small it might seem.
Absolutely. Those little details could be crucial. And in Canada, a first-degree murder conviction, that carries a mandatory life sentence.
No parole for at least 25 years.
It's a serious consequence, reflects how seriously Canada takes this kind of crime. But, on a different note, it's interesting to see another case, this one involving Alex Suleiman.
Another Nigerian man.
Right, but this time it's wire fraud. Got sentenced in the U.S. 12 and a half years, plus he has to pay over $13 million in restitution.
Shows you the range of cases that come up even within the same city.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on, there's a case the EFCC in Nigeria is handling.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission.
Right, they've arraigned 4 Chinese nationals and 1 Nigerian. It's a whole hotel review scam.
These guys were allegedly manipulating online reviews for hotels.
They used a fake name, Heron Koshir, on Telegram, offered to boost hotels to 5-star status for $5 a review.
Wow. Talk about undercutting the system. All 5 of them, though, they've pleaded not guilty to the charges.
Conspiracy, cheating, and impersonation, those are the charges.
And get this, these 5, they were part of a much bigger group.
Over 100 people were arrested back in January in Abuja for the same thing.
A whole network of fake reviewers targeting hotels all over Europe and beyond.
Wild, isn't it?
Now for a story that really hits home. Over 5,000 women and children in the Rawaza community in Abuja, they're dealing with a serious water crisis.
Their only water source, it dried up during the dry season.
So now they have to walk, we're talking long distances, just to get water from shallow wells.
And that water, it's likely contaminated. This is despite the fact that the government allocated a huge amount of money, over 48 billion in Naira, for water projects.
Monitoring this civic tech platform, they're calling out the government, pointing out the billions spent on things like the Nigeria Cultural Center,
the Millennium Tower, the VP's residence, all while this community can't even access safe water.
Monitoring is urging immediate action from the FCT administration and the water board. They're using the hashtag #Water4Iwaza to spread the word.
It's a basic human right, clean water.
Absolutely. Okay, now for a story from Yobe State, Bunyadi specifically. This is a really disturbing incident. On March 17th, some youths attacked the home of a policeman.
And tragically, his 2 sons were killed. One was 20, the other just 13.
And they set his property on fire. A security source said the policeman was targeted because he was really tough on people involved in criminal activities.
And it sounds like his origin, being from southern Nigeria, played a part too.
He managed to escape. But those poor kids, at first people thought it might be Boko Haram.
But an intelligence report suggests it could have been some of the policeman's own colleagues.
Along with those local youths.
If true, that would be deeply concerning. And the policeman, he's actually left Yobe, gone back to his hometown.
Understandable given what's happened. Sahara reporters reached out to the Yobe Police Command's spokesperson, but they haven't gotten a response yet.
In situations like this, it's so important for authorities to be open and transparent to help prevent further fear and speculation.
Absolutely. Turning to international news, there are reports of protests in northern Gaza. People in Beit Lahia are chanting Hamas out.
It's a pretty bold statement given the circumstances. Social media videos show people walking past destroyed buildings carrying banners that say, "Enough wars."
And they're chanting, "We don't want war." Reuters confirmed the location of the protests. They seem to have happened around March 25th.
This is after renewed Israeli military operations began on March 18th.
Which followed a ceasefire that had been in place since January.
The situation is incredibly tense. Palestinian health officials say almost 700 people have died since the fighting started up again.
And sadly, most of those deaths are women and children. This war, it all started after Hamas attacked Israel back in October 2023.
And Hamas has been in control of Gaza since 2007. These protests, they show growing discontent among the people there.
Even in the middle of a war, they're brave enough to speak out.
It really underscores how desperate they are for peace. Okay, shifting gears again, there's some sad news out of South Korea.
A helicopter pilot was killed while fighting those massive wildfires.
The wildfires have spread incredibly fast, forcing more than 27,000 people to evacuate.
They've got dozens of helicopters, thousands of firefighters and soldiers working to get the fires under control.
But those strong winds and the dry conditions, it's making it really tough.
The fire department confirmed the pilot's death, and the Forestry Service has grounded all the firefighting helicopters for now.
It's a terrible loss, and a reminder of the risks these first responders face every day.
Back in Nigeria, things got pretty heated at a Senate hearing on Tuesday. Senator Onyekachi Nobomini and Obi Ezekwesili, the former Minister of Education, they had a real clash.
It happened during a hearing of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petitions.
They were looking into a petition from Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, who claimed the committee chairman wasn't impartial.
She alleged he had ties to Akpabio.
And Ezekwesili was there as a witness, and she really wanted to be heard.
Things escalated from there. Reports say the senator called Ezekwesili names, and she responded in kind.
Not exactly the behavior you'd expect from elected officials. Senator Patrick Ndubweze tried to calm things down, but ultimately the hearing was adjourned.
Indefinitely. There are ongoing court cases involving Akpabio's wife and Akpoti-Uduaghan, plus a key lawmaker was absent.
Ezekwesili spoke out afterwards. She said the Senate's putting its own rules above the Constitution.
Interesting point. She's basically saying that internal rules can't override fundamental rights.
Some good news now. 2 suspects have been arrested in the murder of Reverend Ferfes Ovishukachukwu.
He was the Catholic priest abducted and killed in Kaduna State. Troops from Operation Safe Haven made the arrests on Tuesday.
They raided a community in Lear, LGA, and the main suspect, he confessed.
Said he was hired by someone who lived in the same house as the priest to kidnap him.
Unbelievable. They arrested a second suspect in Agwan, Turkey.
They're both in custody, and the investigation is ongoing.
Hopefully this brings some measure of justice for Father Okechukwu. And lastly, the USCIRF, the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, has released its annual report.
And they're recommending that the Trump administration designate Nigeria as a country of particular concern.
That's a big deal.
They're saying that religious freedom in Nigeria is getting worse. They claim the government hasn't done enough to stop attacks.
And they highlighted the enforcement of blasphemy laws.
Several people are still in prison because of those laws. They also mentioned the demolition of a shrine in Anambra State and restrictions on indigenous priests in Ebonyi State.
But they did acknowledge some positives, like the release of Mubarak Bala and the acquittal of Rhoda Jatto.
Nigeria has a big population, with Muslims, Christians, and people practicing indigenous religions.
And while their constitution protects religious freedom, the USCIRF is clearly worried about how those protections are being put into practice.
This report could have a big impact on U.S.-Nigeria relations.
Well, we've covered a lot today. Crime, fraud, water crises, protests, wildfires, political disputes, religious freedom concerns. It's a lot to process.
It really highlights how interconnected the world is and the challenges we all face.
Thank you for listening to the Today's Top News Headlines on IAM Free Radio and Podcast.